Hey guys, how's it going? These two dads watch Thor, Love and Thunder. So stay tuned for our thoughts here on Fatherly Fandom. So welcome everyone. If it's your first time here, thanks for tuning in. My name is Chris Matthews.
And I'm Matt Parham, and we're happy to be here Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday.
That's right, reviewing the latest in the Thor series of the MCU,
Right.
Thor, Love and Thunder.
Thor, Love and Thunder. So if you haven't been here before, we're just two dads who love all the fandoms out there, from Star Wars to Marvel, DC to the Middle Earth.
To
So we
NFL.
love it all. Yeah.
Got to represent for my Niners.
Yeah.
Just a few minutes here.
Go Seahawks here. So we love it all, and we want to bring our insights and love of all things nerdy to you, our viewers. So if you like all those fandoms out there too, we're here for you, and you should go ahead and like this video and subscribe to our channel. It helps us out here a lot, and helps reach others who would like our show too. So give us a like if you can. Subscribe to the channel. So today we're going to go talk about Thor, Love, and Thunder. If you haven't realized already, we've said it like 4 or 5 times now, but that's okay. It recently premiered on Disney Plus on Thursday, so Matt and I got a chance to watch it on the small screens here. Yeah. So Matt, let's just dive right into it. What did you think of our latest outing into the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Yep. Always good to get back to the movie storylines. You know, it's the TV shows are great in their own right, and they've all got something interesting to pick out of there. They continue the overall story of the MCU, and it's all very interesting. But I have a special place in my heart for the movies. You know, it's where we were introduced to Iron Man. We got great characters like Thor and Captain America and Black Widow, and going to the theater, seeing it all, being a part of that experience is something that I loved very much. Hated that we didn't get enough of that during the pandemic, so I'm glad that they continue to put so much stock into the films. And for this one, it to me felt like a big gamble. You know, they had a lot to put in this story.
Yeah.
I know. And I've read reviews out there, of course, that people that absolutely hate this this movie. And for me, I didn't.
But we're all about positivity here at Fatherly.
Well, yeah. For my movie-going experience, what I typically do is I don't read any reviews. I don't look at rating numbers. I don't look at any kind of trailer marketing content. I like to just go in as cold as possible, so that I can.
Yeah, you don't even watch the trailers, right? You try to stay away from trailers.
Yeah, I should mention though, because it's on our channel. If you check out our playlist, there is a reaction to Thor: Love and Thunder's teaser trailer
by me
here. Yeah.
I like to do those teaser trailer reaction videos too, so you will see those from time to time from me. But I remember back in the day, Matt, remember you used to, when you go to the theater, you would like put your head down in the beginning there, so
now
you
it's easier with a hat. But but so I, if you remember from that video, I actually did give my reaction to the teaser.
That's right, you did. Yeah.
Yep. So it was one of the few times that I saw a little bit of marketing material, and I did actually appreciate what they were trying to do. But mostly,
me too.
I like to go into the film and just see what the artists want me to see as the audience. You know, it's not always the directors and the actors that have the ultimate say in the marketing stuff. It's not always them that are producing, any of the posters and the advertisements on TV or streaming services and that kind of stuff. So to me, it's like we've seen other movies that people have, the audience has seemingly been deceived on what type of a movie that they will go see in the theaters, and then there's all of these, people just screaming about how betrayed they feel, basically. I remember there were all of these reviews on a movie called Stranger Than Fiction. It's Will Ferrell movie.
Love that movie.
Yeah, yeah, but the
Highly
trailers
watch that one.
make it seem a little bit like a typical Will Ferrell comedy, and then whenever
Right.
you get to watching the movie, I mean, it's hard not to laugh, not to constantly laugh at Will Ferrell. And for the first half of that movie, you don't really know if this is more on the serious side of comedy, kind of like a Truman Show, where we have a major comedian, playing a more serious role, or if this is just another straight up Will Ferrell comedy. And so the reviews were scathing, and people felt like they were going into a movie that they didn't ultimately get because Stranger Than Fiction was more of a drama than a comedy.
Right.
So I don't like getting into the marketing materials that much because I don't want to feel that sort of deceived type feeling, because that was never the intent of the filmmakers.
Yeah.
Anyway, so going into this movie cold, I didn't have a ton of expectations aside from that teaser. I did know, of course, the main cast. I did know from just some of the news sites that Natalie Portman was going to take on the Mighty Thor role, and that
Couldn't avoid that, right?
Right, yeah, was going to be coming as Gore the God Butcher, that there'd be the Olympians and all that kind of stuff. So I knew some news going into this, and I was looking forward to those pieces. And even knowing that stuff, I think, might have been a little bit of a detriment, because for me, the movie felt disjointed the whole time. It felt like it just couldn't figure out what type of a movie it wanted to be. And I think that started right off the bat from the very first frame. They have a very sort of serious, dramatic, horrific opening to this movie. And
Yeah.
it's it's a great introduction for a villain, which is what they're setting up with Christian Bale's Gore character. But I mean, it's just so tragic that getting to the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff next, and the Thor losing his identity, so to speak, it just felt like it was part of a different film, And every once in a while, we'd get back to the Gore storyline, and then whenever they put in the Mighty Thor stuff, it felt the same. It was like, we have this really tragic story taken straight from the comics. Jane Foster's cancer storyline is 100% from the comics, and I give Taika Waititi all the credit in the world. He takes the comics and puts it on screen, and sometimes it's the weirdest part of those comics, and it can play very well comedically, but sometimes that comedy just comes at, I don't know, it felt like the wrong time, So I very much liked the bombastic feel of the comedy parts of this movie, with the screaming goats and all that kind of thing. Yeah. Interestingly enough, fun
I
fact:
felt like those goats the entire time watching this.
you felt, yeah. That's a good point.
Spoiler
For
my
those
review.
of you that are interested in movie trivia, a lot of people have said that was Taika recorded screaming, and it is not actually his screams. He was inspired by somebody on set showing him a movie that came out on YouTube where somebody had edited in screaming goats to the Trouble music video by Taylor Swift, and he thought it was hilarious, so that was
That makes
what
sense.
I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I feel like there's a lot of that in his movie making. I was like, I find that hilarious. Let's find some way to put that into the film.
yeah, yeah. Well, and he has said in interviews that he'll look through the comics, and he'll look for some of that crazy random stuff like the goats, and of course the goats are part of Norse mythology too, and they even include that little line where Thor talks about eating them, because that's what he does in the Norse mythology.
Meeting
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
Right. So I like those inclusions, but at a time when we're intercutting that and somebody, going through chemotherapy, it can come off as jarring. And
Telling me.
yeah, yeah. So I thought, well, I mean, he had his work cut out for him, because if you're going to include Jane Foster as the Mighty Thor, it'd be a loss to the original storyline to not include that stuff. And of course, you're dealing with somebody that has cancer, so you don't want to make a joke out of that. So putting that into a movie where you also have people wearing incredibly colorful helmets and riding around, Viking spaceships with screaming goats, it's a tough job to make that all seem cohesive. So I just don't think that ultimately enough of the different story elements had time to
shut the
be
door.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, somebody's.
Hey, shut the door.
Yeah, so I really like the soundtrack. Guns
me
N'
too.
Roses is one of Taika's favorite bands, one of my favorite bands. But on top of that, him including like Enya and Mary J. Blige and even the Old Spice jingle is just
I
like,
know, right?
what are we watching? It's so many left field.
Many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and then
I was singing 80s rock bands, and then all of a sudden we got Enya in there. I'm
Enya.
like, wait a second.
Yeah.
But the soundtrack, Michael Giacchino did the soundtrack for this, the written soundtrack it was. So we did a fantastic job as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's a veteran to superhero soundtracks, having done Spider-Man and things like that.
Lost.
So, yeah. Very, very good soundtrack. I also loved the fact that they brought Matt Damon back as Loki.
I know.
And this time joined with Sam Neill as Odin, Melissa McCarthy as Hela, and then Christopher Hemsworth's own brother, which a lot of you know him from Westworld, Luke Hemsworth, his older brother, Chris's older brother. So all that was cool to see. It felt a little bit like, you remember the beginning of Austin Powers 3 where they had like Tom Cruise come in as Austin Powers, and they had Gwyneth Paltrow and Kevin Spacey and Danny DeVito doing all the parts. And this felt like that. Like, how many celebrities or cameos are we going to pack into this little scene? And the whole movie just kept coming across like that.
I know, it did. And I was about to say that. It was a facsimile of that scene. The entire movie kind of plays that way.
Yeah. Let's do more. Let's put this in and that in. And all of that's great. I mean, they had
I didn't hear a no. I didn't hear a no either.
Yeah. No, so it just felt disjointed for me. So
absolutely,
with all of that in there, I didn't get enough of my favorite stuff. Christian Bale as Gore, Natalie Portman as Thor, Mighty Thor. Valkyrie, she was just kind of there every once in a while in the background. Yeah, and I felt like this could have been great as two separate movies, or maybe even three.
Yeah, right.
Crammed all together. Just didn't give each of those elements enough time. Now, the one thing that I think that they absolutely 100% nailed here, though, was the super-powered kid battle at the end. I was just screaming at the screen when that
little It was a good soundtrack on that one.
Yeah, it was. But the bunny kid, just like,
again with the ridiculousness of just full out.
Yeah, I loved Axel. I was totally into that scene. I can see it being absolutely ridiculous to someone who didn't like this movie, but for me, I was like, oh yeah, every single one of them's gonna just fry whatever these shadow monster things are supposed to be. And
he could just give these powers out at any point in time to just anybody.
Yeah,
great. Why hasn't he used this before? This could have come in handy.
Yeah,
so many situations.
Like. At the end of Endgame, I mean, we could have, done so much with this limited time only Thor transfer of power. But
Yeah, for a limited time only. Power of Thor.
yeah. So I do. I think that there was good parts to this movie, and I like Taika Waititi's influence on a lot of that stuff. And overall, the movie was still fun for me, including the last, what do we call them, button scenes or tag scenes. I liked.
Yeah. Hopefully, it's a good tag.
Right, yeah. Brett Goldstein coming in as Hercules. I haven't told my wife about that yet, but she's a giant fan of Ted Lasso, and so having him come in at the last second there as a very comic accurate representation.
He is very comic accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, down to the clasps and stuff on his outfit there, but. So it'll be interesting to see where that's going to go. I mean, we barely got any time with Russell Crowe as Zeus either, so I don't know. I think really they probably should have used the movie as a way to hand off the Thor mantle to either Valkyrie or Mighty Thor or something like that. Like
you would
they took the Jane Foster storyline as far as that cancer storyline goes in the comics. So, I mean, you don't want to drag that out into another movie, but you got to do something here. And maybe it's all contractual. Maybe Chris Hemsworth is, still on for more Thor movies. I don't really know where this is going at the end of this film, but it's what we got. So, for me,
what we got.
Overall rating, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10. All right.
What about you, Chris? What do you think?
Man. Okay. Yeah. Get ready. Yeah. And I'll preface this with the fact that, this movie was a lot of fun. And there's plenty of you out there that probably really, really like this movie. And that's okay, guys. It's okay to like stuff. And it's okay to not like stuff, too. So, I'm going to give my review here. Don't hate me for the things I'm going to bring up. It's just my opinion. And if you enjoyed it, great. If you didn't, great. It's all subjective, right? And we're all having a lot of fun with this. I still enjoy the MCU. I still am excited for what comes. But this one was a little less than satisfactory to me, I'm just going to say. So Thor Love and Thunder, it was directed by Taika Waititi. It was written by Taika Waititi and Jennifer Caton Robinson. And so she came in like February 2020, so I don't know the whole story behind that, but maybe there was some rewrites in there that the studio had her come in and do. I looked up the Rotten Tomatoes score. It was 65% for the critics. Audience score was a little bit higher, 77%. And watching this movie, like you, Matt, I found it disjointed. I found myself loving the individual ingredients of this film, but as a whole, I didn't enjoy the taste at all. The story of Thor: Love and Thunder, it puts together some very serious moments, like you were talking about, buddy, along with a heavy hand of levity, with little regard to what's been established before in previous films, even in Taika's Ragnarok. In an effort, and it does that. It just puts things aside in an effort to be funny, exciting, and new. And Taika Waititi has said he didn't want to retread what he did with Ragnarok, and he definitely succeeded in that respect. But I don't know if it's exactly what we should have gotten out of this. The story was a combination of the outstanding comic book run from Jason Aaron and Esad Ribic called Thor: God of Thunder from 2013. Which introduced us to Gore the God Butcher. And arguably, for me, he's one of the best new villains that came out in the last decade, I would say, against Thor. So that was such a cool character. I did read that run in the comic books. Amazing comic book. And it's also based off of Jason Aaron's run of Mighty Thor that had Jane Foster become the Mjolnir-wielding hero, the Mighty Thor. And during production of Ragnarok, Taika Waititi was actually reading those comics, and he told Marvel that he wanted to include Jane Foster's Mighty Thor in the next film if he was going to direct it. So he was very much pushing for that element. And like you said, hearing you talk about it, Matt, yeah, I think that these stories would have been better served as separate storylines. I think that we could have gotten 2 movies, maybe even 3 out of this as well. So it's
Another trilogy, easily.
yeah, right. So in probably why I have such a bad taste in my mouth with this is because I have read the comics and I know that there's some brilliant stories to this. In the comic Thor God of Thunder, we get to see Thor at 3 stages of his life. In his earlier days, in his latter years as king of Asgard, and in the present. And each one of them plays a significant role in the story to bring down the Gore, the God Butcher, who Thor has had to deal with in each of these 3 timelines. So he's been around a long time in this story. This element really could have been used, it could have been a really powerful element that they used in this movie on screen to show like a rudderless Thor, where he's at this point in time, and how he finds some direction in his life, knowing where he's come from in the past and where he's going in the future, and the lessons he can learn from both. And giving Thor a child by the end of this movie, it does give him some new purpose, but I don't feel like it was very earned in this movie.
That just seemed, I mean, it was
left field.
Out of left field, but it was kind of like, well, what do they do with this? Because, I mean, they had, to me, a pretty solid ending to the Gore character in that, you know, he basically gets Vader's ending. He sacrifices himself for his kid.
Yeah.
But then you have to deal with the kid. What's next? You know, like, so I don't know. It just seemed sort of a writer's hole, and
yeah,
what they came
and
up with.
so the whole intent is, if you didn't know, that character, the child's name in this was actually Love. So the title of this show, Thor: Love and Thunder, refers to Thor and this child, which we see at the end. I don't know if that was put together well. But both of these, both the comics that it was based on are outstanding and definitely worthy of a read. But I almost wonder if trying to do too much in this movie they end up trying to wear too many hats too. And to me, it definitely misses the mark, man. What you could have had, and it could have been an incredibly impactful story for Thor. But not only that too, it could have been one of the best Marvel movies out there, just sticking to some of the content that we had from the comics and this plethora of stuff. And now, and I think that's the most frustrating thing about it, is now they can't use that stuff because they've already put it included in this movie. So we can't see a nice interpretation of that literature onto the big screen anymore because it's been used. And that's why the movie, it's disappointing to me. It's not because it's a bad movie either. It is absolutely fun, and I got to give my hat off to Chris Hemsworth. He hams it up in the movie, and I absolutely love all of his giddiness and craziness, and I love his comedic timing and everything in this. And Christian Bale brings weight and kills it as Gore, literally.
I was going to ask you, just on Chris Hemsworth note, is this from the comics? The whole sort of side plot of him talking to Mjolnir and Stormbreaker as if you know, anthropomorphizing.
And this is the first time we've ever seen anything like that. It's like, okay, now Mjolnir and Stormbreaker are now sentient. It's like that has not been set up in anything, not in the movies or anything like that. So it's an invention just for this movie so that they can have some fun with it. So, but I also have to and I do want to give credit to Natalie Portman. She definitely did make me feel some emotions in this. In that beginning scene, Christian Bale did an amazing job with that beginning scene. I really felt something in that, and that's another reason I was so disappointed, because those were such good little scenes, little emotional beats that they had in there, but it just didn't. They couldn't fit it all together. So
I kind of wish that give this just the one thing, you know, give it the Gore the God Butcher storyline, and then end with the tease of Natalie Portman back as Jane Foster and her taking on the mantle of Mighty Thor. Then that's the next movie, you know.
That would have been perfect.
Give her the entire film, like it's hers next, and give us all those same moments we got. It could have just been so much more powerful, like having her carry the weight of a film on her own, but yeah, we got it just kind of crammed in here. And like you said, now that's done. There's not going to, there can't be any more Jane Foster as the Mighty
No more
Thor.
Mighty Thor either. It's like, yeah, we're set up for this character that's really cool. Natalie Portman did a great job with her hero character, and now that's done. It's like there's no more. It's like we get to see this character for the first time, and that's it. And that kind of pissed me off as well. And it is reported to like they were unsure whether they'd be using Jane Foster's cancer storyline throughout this movie. And so the story did change quite a bit through filming and editing. So they were kind of getting their groove on what this thing was. So they were even changing this movie in the editing room. So it's just, and you can tell with the writing of this. And like I mentioned earlier, Jennifer Caton Robinson ended up being hired to work on the screenplay in February 2020. So we don't know what went on behind the scenes. Taika Waititi was solely writing the screenplay before that. And so it's really interesting to see. And Taika Waititi, he's known for taking these major liberties in his films. And for Ragnarok, it really did pay off. It was a lot of fun, and it was a refreshing take on Thor, especially after The Dark World. And, you know, many artists can create beautiful works through, like, chaotic processes, but I feel like this movie shows that you can go a little too far with that kind of stuff. And when you're operating in an established story in a world like the MCU, it really begins to show after a while. And in this movie, we're introduced to the idea that, yeah, Mjolnir and Stormbreaker are sentient and can feel human emotions, and like you mentioned, Matt, and this was not hinted at in any previous film. I've never seen that in the comics, that he is talking to Mjolnir on the side like, hey, make sure you protect my girlfriend, and here's a beer, Stormbreaker. None of that stuff. I was just like, okay, what are we getting here? And we also have no regard in this film for the lessons that Thor learned in Ragnarok. I mean, how his powers come from within him rather than from a hammer. But instead, in this movie, it's all about Mjolnir, Stormbreaker, and Zeus's thunderbolts end up being like the most important elements rather than our heroes themselves. So I feel like it's a worse storyline than Ragnarok when it comes to that. So all the things that they learned... It's like, well, forget all that. We're going to do this for this movie. And it's hard to see really how this fits within the same universe as a movie like Eternals, which I would argue took its material far too seriously. So this is kind of the opposite of that. And, you know, Marvel's always in, you know, the first couple of phases did a really good job at balancing out the humor and the serious moments. And I feel like we might be getting off the rocker one way or the other with these extremes that we're seeing. And, you know, I gotta say, like, this movie's portrayal of gods, showing how they're disinterested, omnipotent beings that only care about themselves and apparently orgies as well. It's like, was crazy to me. And, you know, Russell Crowe, I love Russell Crowe, man. And, you know, you could tell that he had a lot of fun with this role, but I really wanted to see, like, a badass performance by him as Zeus. And, you know, instead of Maximus, we got a Zeus who is only there to be played for laughs. And somehow, this is my biggest qualm with the movie, we as an audience are supposed to just shrug it off at the fact that Thor spears him through essentially killing him. Yeah. And they laugh it off as they go to confront an adversary who they're fighting because he's killing gods. But they just kill a god and they're like, oh, well, you never meet your idol.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between these characters? What's the difference between our antagonists and our protagonists? If they're both killing gods, or trying to at least, we see in The Stinger that Russell Crowe's Zeus does live, but it was just, it was a WTF moment for me in the middle of that. I was like, what the is going on here? So taking this movie on its own, I can really enjoy a lot of the content, and I really can, because it feels like they were just making it as they go. So it was a lot of little fun moments. It really does end up being it ends up being less enjoyable to me because you can tell that they were just having fun going along with it. And it did have an amazing opening, like I said, with Christian Bale. But the idea of exploring whether gods are good in the universe, and it is an interesting concept. And the villain's motivation, I did understand. And I thought that was a really cool element that they had for Gore the God Butcher, and that comes from the comics. And I have to give so much credit for the writers for exploring that, and the performance by Christian Bale is stellar. So I can't say enough good things about him. You know, some people had a problem that, you know, Gore didn't look like he did from the comics. I really didn't have that as an issue.
I think they got it as close as they're going to get. Like, after a while, you're not going to get a character, you know, caked in a ton of makeup or just pure CGI to be, you know, satisfying to everybody. And it's just going to end up looking even weirder. You know, I think they make him look about as close as you can get without crossing a line. You know?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of things they could have done to make him look more like the character. And he does look more alien in the comics. He doesn't look like a human being. But for me, it's all about the spirit of characters. If you're getting the spirit of the character right, then I really don't care what you look like. And I think that Christian Bale did get the spirit down for this character. He was ominous at times. He was relatable. He did a very good job. So I don't have a problem with it.
As an actor, he has to be allowed the ability to do that stuff. You can't have his face completely covered up and stuff, or you know, otherwise the emotion is lost. All the little idiosyncrasies that are part of Christian Bale's performance as a major professional actor get lost, get destroyed by too much. I've read some of that stuff too, and it's like, how much are you really going to take away from these actors and their ability to emote?
Right. So yeah, I had no problem with that whatsoever. So that's definitely not a complaint for me. So good job on that, guys. So for a rating, when I would give this one, Matt, you said you gave it a 6 out of 10, right? Yeah. So I'm gonna give this one a 5 out of 10. That's my rating for this one. The lowest rating I've probably ever given a movie here. And the reason for that is because there could have been a much better movie, or much better 2 movies or 3 movies made with this material, given the time and care. And movie making is a very difficult thing, and there are so many people that are put their all into these movies, and the effects are amazing. And as I said earlier, the actors' performances in this film are stellar. But I do believe that the story and the writing were definite weak points in this, and a detriment to this film. I really don't have a desire to watch it again too, which is a big marker for me. Rewatchability is a big thing for how I rate these things, and I don't feel like this Marvel entry even has any major impacts in the MCU moving forward. I don't know what Thor's going to do, and you know, I just don't think it's going to have any impact on what we're seeing in the next film of Marvel. So there you go.
Well, I kind of wonder if, I mean, by just constantly leaving him out there, when it comes to the next Avengers movie, you know, obviously we've got news now that they're going up against Kang. It's not going to be for quite a while, so of course there can be a ton that happens from now until then. But how do you go up against some of these major adversaries without a player like Thor? And if you're going to exclude him, then, you know, we're going to get into a situation like with Civil War, where everybody just kind of like, well, where is he at?
Where's Thor?
So, or you get into the other situation like with the Avengers, where you know, Thor does show up and it's just inexplicable. Like, I'm worried that we're going to get more Jane Foster, more Mighty Thor, with like no real gravity to the situation that she died. You know, because that's essentially what happened with Loki at the end of the first Thor movie, and then he's back. You know, just no real explanation as to why. No real explanation as to why Thor can get back to Earth very easily with the breaking of, you know, the Bifrost and all that stuff. And Marvel does that sometimes, and it's kind of like, okay, well, you know, we're just gonna have to deal with it as fans. Like, there's no real weight to whatever happens at the end of these movies. They can pretty much do whatever the next ones.
Yeah, and like I mentioned in our She-Hulk review earlier, like, I feel like this is so, like, the Marvel content that we're getting is so shallow right now, and I want something with more substance, and we're just not getting it. And I have a lot of hope
Yeah.
for Wakanda Forever. That looks amazing. And so Ryan Coogler, man, he is one of my most favorite new directors out there. He did the Creed movies. He did the first Black Panther, and he came back for the second one here. And yeah, I have a lot of faith in that one, and I think that we're going to see something very special with that. I think that one comes out in November. We're going to review that one too. So.
Yep, and then I gotta say, if you didn't catch some of the D23 news from
There's tons
the
of stuff.
weekend, yeah, go check it out. Secret Invasion is one that I'm looking forward to. Got a very weird werewolf at was it Werewolf at Midnight or Werewolf at Night?
Yeah.
Not sure what that's going to be at all, but the MCU's going for it, taking what we had from the first Avengers movie and now expanding to like 400 characters.
all over the place. So we'll see how it all comes together and what happens. Hey, that's my dog. You guys heard my dog for the first time. He's Monty, making his first appearance on the show.
Yeah.
So on that note, if you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to our channel. If you like this content, go ahead and like this video, share it with your friends and everything, get the word out there. We appreciate everybody who subscribed to this channel. We really appreciate it. It does help us out a lot. So our goal, I think, is to at least make it to 100 here in the next year or so. We're a small channel, but we love doing this. We love talking about movies, television shows, and just enjoying all the fandom. Even on one that we're very critical of, like Thor, Love and Thunder. It's an absolute pleasure to get to talk to you, Matt, my best friend, about this kind of stuff. So go ahead and do that. There'll be a little thing on the side down here. You can click on if you want to see one of our other videos for one of our reviews for our shows. It's over on the side for you. Got all the kind of stuff. So you got anything else for us before we depart these lands and take the Rainbow Bridge, brother?
Yeah, just remember to keep checking us out. Come back soon for our review on tonight's House of the Dragon episode.
Yes.
And then, of course, we'll be tackling more episodes from Rings of Power and Hulk later on in the week. And coming back on Sunday with double feature. What are we going to be reviewing next Sunday, buddy?
Next Sunday. What are we reviewing next Sunday?
The two Spider-Man films.
Spider-Man. Yeah, so they came out with the extra fun edition in theaters for Spider-Man.
Yeah,
so we'll be reviewing that. And Silver Screen Sundays, we're going to tackle the original with Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man. And I got to say, my kids love the original Spider-Man. That's one that we can put on and watch time and time again. I don't know what it is, but the kids love that one. I do too, so what am I talking about? It is a classic. And we watched it in high school. It brings back lots of good memories. So it'll be a lot of fun getting to do that next week.
Indeed. All right. Well, from all our families to yours, have a good one.
Have a good one.